Hey Ladybird, so good to see you again. Thanks for joining me. I am so excited about getting started this week. Hopefully you have read our newest blog that's up on the website. I'm not even going to give you the title yet because we'll go into that in a minute. But if you haven't, you can go read it after this and it'll make a lot more sense then. But 5 things that I want to get started with this vlog with. I'm going to try to keep this one short as well. One is that I do a word every year. So what does that mean? So typically in November, December, January, I will ask the Lord, can you give me one word for this next year? Or maybe a phrase. Tell me something and give me some revelation about what you want to do in and through me this next year. And those words could be a lot of things. It could be, I've had some that are fallow ground. I've had some that are mean water. I've had sow, S-O-W, that God's going to do in my heart. And so I ask God for a word every year. I've been doing that for about 6 or 8 years now. Second thing I do is I ask Him for scripture with it. I want a Bible verse to back it up. I don't want just a word. I want the word so that I have a foundational place, a root that I can go back to throughout the year. And I'm going to read that over and over again. It's going to kind of keep me grounded. And the third thing is that I ask friends to come along with me on the journey. I will text or email my friends probably around November. And I'm like, hey, starting to pray for you, for your word. And if you get it, text me and I'll text you mine. Kind of keeps us accountable and it helps people to just think intentionally about their next year. Not just how much weight am I going to lose, or am I going to start a new exercise plan, or what new book am I going to read, but what is God going to do in my life this next year? It's so fun because some of the words that my friends have sent over the year, and they're not always fun, by the way, the words have been trust, intentional, drought, accountability, available, urgency, poise. That was one of my friends for this year, actually. And so they can be anything. And I love how people have dug into that. So 4, a little tidbit about my word. In 2019, I had 2 words, water and drought. And I went through a drought season. God kept me watered through that though. So I was super excited about 2020. And so I asked God, I was like, okay, it would be really, really cool if you could give me a New Testament verse for 2020, okay? Like He listens to anything that I'm saying anyway. But I'd had lots of verses over the last few years in the Old Testament, which is great because I love the Old Testament. But I was just like, hey, can we mix it up this year and do a New Testament verse? But that's not really what happened. Number 5, my word was actually from the Old Testament. And I am so grateful that it was. It's actually from the verses in Joshua 5:15. And my word for 2020, which is our theme for the next couple of months here at Hey Ladybirds, is holy ground. And I want to dig into that today, but it was so interesting because when I got the words holy ground, it was in mid-December, and I was like, oh, holy ground, that sounds so awesome and majestic, and like, wow, this is going to be an awesome year. But God, I really asked for a verse from the New Testament. Remember that? And what was so interesting is that he kindly, because He does talk to me like this, He was like, hey, so holy ground is only mentioned 3 times in the Bible. And one of those times, it's in the New Testament in Acts. It's actually a recount of Moses' story. So God was like, if you want to use that as a New Testament time, you can. But really your verse is going to be Joshua 5:15. So I was like, okay, fine. So back to holy ground. That's a little bit about words. So it's September, so I want you to start thinking about a word for 2021. And I'm sure everybody's like, any word other than COVID, quarantine, 2020, anything other than that, right? But let's still dig into where God has us right now. And that is in 2020, in the middle of COVID, in the middle of tons of tension in the world. But it is and can be holy ground for right where you are. So let's dig in a little bit. Like I said, there are only 2 narratives in the Bible that talk about holy ground. 2 characters that experienced, not that it didn't experience holy ground, but that term is recorded. One is Moses and one is Joshua. Now the Moses one we're pretty familiar with, right? It's the burning bush, it's Moses. He then was commanded to go back and lead the Hebrews out of Egypt, out of slavery, and through the Exodus into the Promised Land. So we all kind of know that Charleston Heston with the burning bush moment. But let's dig into Moses a little bit more. One, Moses had been running. This was a man who was Hebrew, but he grew up in Egypt with the Egyptians. And so everything about him was different. He didn't belong. He didn't belong with the Hebrews and he didn't belong with the Egyptians. And so he ran. He said, peace out, I'm going out to the desert. So that's what he did. Goes out to the Arabian desert. He gets married, has a couple kids, has a really great relationship with his in-laws, but he's in the desert and he's just living his life pretty comfortably, I might add, because there's no conflict out there. He doesn't have to deal with anything going on in Egypt, doesn't have to deal with hearing the complaining of the Hebrews or even the complaining of the Egyptians and they're high and mighty and, running the slave master thing. He didn't have to do any of that, living comfortably in the desert. And he's going along one day and he sees a burning bush. And that's when God calls him over to that, tells him to take off his shoes because he's standing on holy ground. Amazing. So you have this place where Moses is living comfortably. He's passive. Then he has this encounter with God on holy ground. And then after that, he takes people out of slavery and into freedom. But it's not a quick victory. It's something where Moses is going to have patience. There's going to be long suffering. It's going to be a long and hard road before that victory happens. And so let's transition to Joshua. Joshua is very, very different than Moses. Joshua has actually been with Moses almost from the beginning. He's been kind of his right-hand man. But Joshua has a completely different personality than Moses does. I don't know what they are on the Enneagram, but they are very different at other ends of the spectrum in their personalities. Joshua was eager to be the leader, the next leader. He was eager to go into the Promised Land when the Israelites were like, nope, we're not going in. He was one of the 2 spies that said, yeah, we can do this. So he has a very different personality. Before Joshua had this encounter with God, Joshua had experienced Moses' death, so I'm sure he was sad, but he was taking lead and taking charge with the Israelites. And so right before that, we see these verses where all of the Hebrew men had not been circumcised in the desert, in the wilderness. And so Joshua was like, we've got to get right with God. And so we all need to be circumcised before we go into the Promised Land. I love it because what that shows is that Joshua is eager to be obedient. He has no problem with it. And so you have obedience on this side. And then Joshua has his encounter with the Lord. Joshua encounters him on holy ground right here. And then immediately after that is the Battle of Jericho. And the walls come tumbling down, and the Israelites are making their way into the Promised Land. So you have 2 characters, one reluctant, hesitant. And actually, if you look at Moses' encounter with God after holy ground, he is like, hey, I'm not your guy. I'm not the one for this. I can't do this. I can't talk. I don't have good words. I'm not well educated, even though he was. I'm not the person for this. It's like a chapter and a half of Moses arguing with God why he can't do this. Joshua, though, again, like I told you, he's eager. Let's look at the encounter and with Joshua in Joshua 5:15. It's amazing because it's very short. It says, the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, take your sandal off your foot, for the place where you stand is holy. And then after that is a really short sentence. Here's all it says. And Joshua did it. That's it. No lengthy conversation between Joshua and God. No hesitancy. Joshua just did it. And then right after that is the destruction of Jericho. What's amazing about these two people is that they were both standing on ordinary ground. There was nothing special. They were not in a temple or a tabernacle. This is before Moses went to the top of the mountain and received the 10 Commandments. Nothing was extraordinary. It was all insignificant. It was a desert. It was land. Just like 2020 has been for us. It's been ordinary. There's not been anything extravagant about it. If anything, it's been mundane. It's been the same thing over and over. And in fact, we've had loss in this season, right? We've lost holidays or our places of work, places of worship. We've lost going to weddings or funerals, births, being with family and friends. So much in this season is not shiny and bright in what we're used to. And we so want it to be over. But God is saying, can you shift your perspective and possibly think that where I have you is holy ground? What am I doing on this ordinary ground to prepare you for something extraordinary? What am I doing here to prepare you for what I have ahead? Is it freedom? Is it victory? Is it a promised land that we've been waiting for? I don't know. I don't know what's ahead. But what I do know is that when I thought about those words, holy ground, back in December of last year, I did not expect to be where I was, where I am now, where any of us are now. But God continually reminds me through His Word and through His Holy Spirit that the place where we are is holy because He is here. So let us not take it for granted. Let us dig in to where God has us right now. Is it at home schooling? Is it working from home, waiting for your church to open, or maybe going back, but you're wearing a mask everywhere? You're frustrated with the government or with the news or with your friends or with your family. But what does God want to do in here, regardless of what's going on the outside? So go take a read of the blog, because one thing that I talk about is that Moses and Joshua had to see something before they could hear the voice of God. And then once they hear it, they needed to act. They needed to do something. So, ladybirds, I'm going to cheer you on. Go read the two stories about Moses and about Joshua. Read about the holy ground. It's only in 2 places. And then ask the Lord, what do you want me to hear from you? What do you want me to do to prepare for the next season that you have for me? It is holy ground that we're on. And I am cheering you on because there is a promised land awaiting. So have a great week. I'll see you in the next couple weeks. Hey, I'm back really quick because I wanted to tell you also, we would love to hear from you. What is your holy ground? Tell us in the comments on YouTube channel or on our website. What is the holy ground that God has you in right now? Tell us. We want to pray for you. We want to cheer you on And cheers, ladybirds. Love you guys.